Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I wrote a piece over the weekend of financial markets compass for 2016, more focused on the frontier and sub-Saharan African markets. And I quoted Wayne Gretzky, a good hockey player plays where the puck is. A great hockey player plays where the puck is going to be. We had a very dramatic first day of the markets for 2016. China halted stock trading after a 7% rout. This triggered circuit breakers. Shares obviously were suspended. And then today, another dramatic day. After a 3% gap down, China was said to intervene to prop up the stock market and the yuan. I wrote about this in September and August last year. In September, I said China must fix its economy despite military show. And then in August, I wrote China roils the markets, and I was specifically talking about Africa. I like this photograph, Church Above the Fog. Eritrea is beautiful. Come and visit. I've been wanting to visit for a while. And to go back to Richard Ford, who I'm still reading, The Lay of the Land. Don't enjoy it as much as his other books, but he's still a brilliant writer. And in one of his books called Canada, he says, I'm intrigued by how ordinary behavior exists so close beside its opposite. Political reflections, this is from Asia Times. Last week's mass executions in Saudi Arabia suggest panic at the highest level of the monarchy. I think that's true. Soon the West may not be able to keep the House of Saud in power, whether it wants to or not. Bahrain joined Saudi Arabia in severing ties with Iran in the biggest meltdown in relations between the Middle Eastern powers in almost 3 decades. Interestingly, Turkey took a more nuanced stance. Saudi Arabia Foreign Minister Adel al-Jubeir, who announced the decision to eject the Iranians, said late Sunday in Riyadh that his people would no longer deal with a country that supports terrorism and sectarianism. Khamenei had said earlier that Saudi rulers would face repercussions for the execution of the Shiite cleric, and the divine hand of revenge will take the Saudi politicians by the throat. And I went back to the Madman theory, which is, I think, what King Salman is an alumni of. The Madman theory was an important part of Richard Nixon's foreign policy. Primary characteristic of the foreign policy conducted by the US President Nixon. According to Nixon's theory, leaders of hostile communist bloc nations would avoid provoking the United States, fearing an unpredictable American response. Nixon explained the strategy to his White House Chief of Staff, H.R. Haldeman. I call it the Madman theory, Bob. I want the North Vietnamese to believe I've reached the point when I might do anything to stop the war. We'll just slip the word to them. For God's sake, you know Nixon is obsessed about communism. We can't restrain him when he's angry, and he has his hand on the nuclear button. And Nixon said Ho Chi Minh himself will be in Paris in 2 days begging for peace. The Madman strategy can be related to Machiavelli, who in his discourses on Livy discusses how it at times a very wise thing to simulate madness. Saudi Arabia's regional allies rallied to its side, and that was Bahrain, UAE, Sudan and Somalia. And the Independent is saying it seems to have lost its old caution and is plunging into political snake pits without much idea of how it's going to get out of them. Thanks to the overconfidence and undercompetence of the Saudi royal family, Syrian rebels may turn out to be among the biggest losers of the Yemeni war. Holger very kindly compares Saudi Arabia's GDP with Iran's. And WikiLeaks is asking, why was a Saudi Arabian cargo Boeing 747 at Sofia Airport on November the 4th, 2014? I have to read the article, it's not difficult to guess why. Arms shipments. Abe says summit with Putin needed to resolve territorial row. Said on Monday that summit talks with Putin must take place in order for the countries to forge a peace treaty. Japan and Russia never signed a peace treaty after World War II because of conflicting claims over islands north of the Japanese island of Hokkaido, which Japan calls its northern territories. When asked about Putin in a news conference, Abe said, "We both recognize that 70 years after the war's end, to not have concluded a peace treaty is abnormal. But without a summit meeting, this Northern Territories problem cannot be resolved." Abe is moving with dispatch to square off a number of previously intractable foreign policy challenges, South Korea refers. Inside the tiny police state with 7 armies, this is Djibouti, there's a smell of sewage out on the beaches outside, juxtaposed with tangerine sunset views glimmering atop the murky waves, looking southward across the warm waters of the Gulf of Aden. Whale sharks congregate en masse to feed in the fall and the winter. I'm watching through massive glass windows in the lobby of the Sheraton Hotel, an oasis for foreign soldiers and military contractors of every stripe. That's when I notice I'm being eyed by a couple of thugs. It's par for the course in this minuscule police state, where the most prominent industry is catering to the world's competing militaries, and the biggest mistake is pointing out how the government treats its people. Djibouti has become a safari grounds for high-paying sovereign clients, an American hub for its secret wars, and saying that basically Japan has a base there, the French, Germans, Italians, Spanish militaries, and now the Chinese will be operating there too. All shipping passing northward through the Suez Canal to Europe or southward to the Indian Ocean would need to sail through the Bab al-Mandab, or Gate of Tears in Arabic. On one side of the strait lies the small but stable state of Djibouti, on the other side the treacherous and war-torn country of Yemen. I'll put up a photograph that the author posted inside a tiny police state with 7 armies. Eurasia Group has put out their top risks for 2016. Hollow Alliance, Closed Europe, China Footprint, ISIS and Friends, Saudi Arabia, the rise of technologists, unpredictable leaders, Brazil, not enough elections, Turkey, and red herrings. And that took me back to Kapuscinski. If the crowd disperses, goes home, does not reassemble, we say the revolution is over. Interesting point I came across in a South African newspaper. Advent of social media, data mining and startups has resulted in a much higher level of accountability being imposed on those in power. US South China Sea tensions surge as China lands plane on artificial island. China's first landing of a plane on one of its new island runways in the South China Sea shows Beijing's facilities in the disputed region are being completed on schedule, and military flights will inevitably follow, foreign officials and analysts said. The next step will be, once they've tested it with several flights, they will bring down some of their fighter air power, Su-27s and Su-33s, and they will station them there permanently. That's what they're likely to do. These events are a precursor to an ADIZ, or an undeclared but de facto ADIZ, and one has to expect tensions to rise. China is, in my opinion, changing facts on the ground with some speed. Let's move on to the currency markets. The euro, last trading at 108.25, touched a 1 month trough of 107.81 yesterday. Dollar index 98.87. Japanese yen 119.46. Touched 118.705 on Monday. Swissy 1.0017. The pound 147.15. I'm bearish the pound. Aussie coming under pressure 0.7208. Had a bad session yesterday. India rupee 66.425. South Korean won 11.8772. The Rial back over 4.0413. Egyptian pound 782.98 and the rand 15.5239 when I checked last. Dollar index. Let me put up a 3-month chart. My target is 110. Dollar yen. Let me put up a 3-month chart of that as well. I think we should go back above 120 in due course. Sterling, I'm very bearish about that. Got to sell the rebounds, but it feels very strong at the rebound. Commodity markets, gold last trading at 1077.75. Got a big bid yesterday. I'll put up a 3-month chart. Crude oil, very bearish price action yesterday. Went up about 3%, then closed unchanged or down on the day. I like this photograph at Alaska Natural Organics in Anchorage. Greens are raised hydroponically in water without soil or pesticides under blue and red LED lights. Brazil's economy will shrink 2.95% this year, according to the weekly central bank poll. The last time Brazil had back-to-back years of recession was 1930 and 1931. Let me put up a chart of the Real, 1-year chart. You remember I called for way back. It seems to me we're going lower. Sub-Saharan Africa, interesting piece in thehill.com by J. Peter Pham, looking out for Africa while each of Africa's 54 independent states presents a different political and economic risk profile, rooted in each country's unique history and driven by diverse internal and regional dynamics. There are nonetheless several common trends which will broadly impact many of them in 2016. Increasing terrorist violence, talking primarily about Boko Haram, saying that the publication in mid-November of the annual Global Terrorism Index by the Institute for Economics and Peace provided statistical evidence that, in fact, it is the Nigerian group Boko Haram, which in March pledged its allegiance to ISIS and has been branding itself as the Islamic State West Africa province, an evolution I predicted this time last year, is the most deadly terrorist group in the world. Talking about economic growth, although it's expected to be the fastest growing economic region in the world for 2015, it's a lot slower than it was previously. South Sudan, Somalia, Central African Republic, talking about electoral uncertainty, presidential, parliamentary elections. We've been speaking about this for a while, and geopolitical competition. And very interesting essay, have a look at it. Ex-Boazizi PM takes early lead in Central Africa presidential race. This is interesting because he was not expected to be in the lead. S&P warning tide is turning on African debt financing. The agency noted that several SSA currencies had depreciated dramatically. Of the 18 countries S&P rate in the region, only 4 had experienced currency depreciation of less than 10% against the dollar in 2015. Depreciating currency increases the foreign currency debt burden in local currency terms relative to GDP. The statement noted that Mozambique, Zambia, Ghana, Angola, and Senegal were most affected by such debt inflation. Zambia will hold presidential and parliamentary elections on August the 11th under a new constitution. The Kwanza, the Angolan currency which I've been calling lower, slid 15% to an all-time low. trading at 158.737 against the dollar. Drop followed a 24% retreat in 2015, its 8th year of declines. I spoke about this in August when I said the end is nigh for crude oil and oil producers from Caracas to Rwanda, from Riyadh to Abuja. I said then oil is now in free fall. The end is nigh for the oil-based rentier economies. President Obama has scored the equivalent of a hat-trick at the World Cup in how he has advanced the US national interest by using the price of oil as a geopolitical spear. Oil-based economies are going to contract, currencies which have already collapsed are going to be routed, and Greek-style austerity will be the order of the day. I said the meltdown is coming. South African oil share fell 2.72% yesterday, obviously following global markets. Dollar rand, let me put up a 6-month chart, 15.5136. It's in no man's land at the moment. I'd like to sell it below 15. Egyptian EGX 30 down 0.34% year to date. Madame Lagarde is visiting Nigeria as the president seeks a way out of the economic crisis. I look forward to productive meetings as they address important economic challenges, most importantly the impact of low oil prices. And I'll put up a photograph that Reuters Africa tweeted of her arrival, and I think maybe she can cut through the president's resistance to devaluing the currency. Nigerian oil share fell 0.95% yesterday. Ghana Stock Exchange down 0.02% year to date. Kenya, the president was down in Mombasa and is proposing to give some land titles. I like this photograph of him on the ferry. Lower oil prices set to ease Kenya's import bill in 2016. This is Business Daily. Forecasts show oil prices have not found the bottom and could plunge some more or take several years to recover to mid last year's level of $115. This is certainly a plus for Kenya's economy in terms of cushioning the shilling against extreme volatility from import pressures and a stronger US dollar. That was me. I said on the 21st of December, what's going on? I said oil accounts for about a quarter of Kenya's annual import bill. Kenya imported 177.2 billion shillings worth of fuel and lubricants between January and September, a 34.66% drop from 271.2 billion it took in during the same period the previous year. That was a 94 billion shilling swing in the government's favour, nearly $1 billion. That's $1 billion of dollar demand that has evaporated. Since September, the price of fuel has tanked more than 20%, further accelerating this trend. Earlier in the year, I spoke of how this $1 billion boost would underpin our economy by providing a powerful grassroots stimulus. However, what has happened is that the government has creamed off a great deal of this by raising taxes on the price of fuel, thereby improving its fiscal position, and this has blunted the price move at the pump. Kenya shilling, the Teflon shilling 102.30. Nairobi oil share fell marginally 0.14%. Yesterday, NSE 20 fell more sharply 0.84%, but managed to stay above the key level of 4,000. Obviously, 2016 opened with a bang. Chinese stock markets or circuit breakers, mass beheadings in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, roiled the crude oil markets. Nairobi oil share, as I said, edged lower 0.2 points. NSE 20 gave up 33.42 points. Big movers again, Kakuzi, which was the best performing share at the Securities Exchange in 2015, rallying 88.9%, which was bang on with the top performing stock index anywhere in the world. That was Jamaica. Kakuzi closed limit up plus 9.78%. George Williamson Tea, which was the third best performer at the Securities Exchange, up 61.09%, excluding dividends, rallied 4.42% to close at 401. Safaricom ticked 0.31% higher to close at 16.35, but could run up towards 17 because there was very little on the sell side. Kenya Airways rallied 2.04% to regain the 5 level KCB, which surged a mighty 9.38% in the last trading session of 2015, gave back 1.71% to close at 43. Home Africa, listen to this, which had rallied 85.71% in the month of December, saw its rally stopped in its tracks, issued a profits warning on the 31st of December. Yesterday was the first opportunity for the market to react to that warning, retreated 3.84%, but traded shares as low as 2, which was down 23.08%. Mumia Sugar was up 3.12% to close at 165. I hope the week's going well, and 2016 has started with a bang. Once again, thank you for stopping by.